On today's show, new Cavaliers head coach Kenny Atkinson met with the media in Cleveland for the first time yesterday. I've got my reaction to his introductory press conference, plus why have the Cavaliers and Donovan Mitchell not come to an agreement on a contract extension? That's all next right here on Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. You can help to grow the show by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Leave us a positive 5-star review. It helps grow the show a ton. Also, check us out on YouTube. If you're watching this video on the Locked On Cavs YouTube channel, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you are subscribed. If you're not watching this video, well, go watch the video and then do those things. Hit that notification bell as well. That is exactly how you can help to grow Locked On Cavs, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs have come to an end in both the NBA and the NHL. The sports don't stop though. There's still so much going on this summer, and FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I'm Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my days covering the Cavs at places such as 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Magazine, and of course right here at Locked On Cavs. On today's show, I want to talk about Kenny Atkinson's introductory press conference. I was at Cleveland Clinic Courts yesterday as Atkinson met with the media for the first time as the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I've got four things that I think are worth talking about from that press conference. And then later on in the show, final segment of today's show, I want to talk about Donovan Mitchell and his contract extension that has not yet been agreed upon, certainly has not been reported as such. And just for full clarity here, I'm recording this at 11 o'clock Monday night. So if you wake up, if this hits your feed and Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs have agreed to a contract extension, well, the last part of this episode is pointless because all of this stuff is being said prior to that happening. As I record this, again, Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs have not agreed to a contract extension. That, of course, is subject to change. We will get into that later on in the show. But yesterday, Kenny Atkinson met with the media for the first time at Cleveland Clinic Courts. He was with Cavs president of basketball operations, Kobe Altman, and there were a number of things. And Kenny spoke for roughly 40 minutes, answered a ton of questions from the media, some really good questions, I thought. Kobe Altman answered a couple of questions as well, but the main focus of this press conference was certainly on Atkinson. There are four things that I want to talk about from this. I want to talk about what Kenny has learned, both from his time coaching with the Brooklyn Nets and then also his time as an assistant coach with the Clippers and the Golden State Warriors. I want to talk about how he views Evan Mobley, what his hopes are for Mobley. I also think it's worth bringing up the pace that he intends for this team to play with and his thoughts on the core four. So we will dive into all those things, but I want to start with what he's learned. Because if you think back to his time in Brooklyn, it was certainly considered a success, but the expectations for the most part with the Nets, obviously that last year is a little bit different, but I really don't think he got a fair shake at the end with the Nets. The expectations in Brooklyn were not quite the same. He was not tasked with taking a team to a conference finals, an NBA finals, deep playoff success for it to be considered a successful season. He took over a rebuilding team. He took over a team that was not just rebuilding, but was considered the worst situation in basketball, where the Nets didn't have their draft picks. They didn't have a ton of good players. They were taking on bad salaries in order to try and get some of those good players. And Kenny did a masterful job. He was able to get the best out of every player for the most part. You know, you can certainly, I've brought up D'Angelo Russell a number of times on this show as he was an all-star in that season. Kenny Atkinson had a big part, I think, in that. Jarrett Allen developed as a player a ton, and now the Cavaliers are obviously reaping some of those benefits, and should things stay the way that they are right now in terms of how this roster is constructed, Atkinson will get to reap the benefits of some prior coaching that he did once upon a time. Same thing for Karis LeVert. So those are some things that really worked for him. And he was asked about what he's learned throughout his coaching life over the last several years. And he's learned that relationships really matter, that you have to get the buy-in from guys in the locker room if you're going to be a successful head coach in this league. And he is obviously right about that. And there are different ways to do things. And I think what is important is what he learned in his time away from Brooklyn, in his time as an assistant coach with the Clippers and with the Warriors. Because, yeah, that time in Brooklyn was a success, but things went south when star players arrived. And I don't think it's his fault, because if you look at where Kyrie Irving was at in his career and some of the things that he was saying and doing and missing time for in the pandemic, a lot of that was something that Kenny Atkinson couldn't control. And I understand Kenny was gone right around the time the pandemic started. So it's not as if he had to deal with, Kyrie missing games because he wouldn't get a vaccine, stuff like that. But, Kyrie had a comment about some days Kenny's going to be the coach, some days I'm going to be the coach, and stuff like that. And it's hard to do your job when something like that is being said. But then he went to the Clippers and was around two superstars in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And then from there, he went to the Warriors, where he was around Steph Curry, he was around Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, a really, really talented bunch, filled with guys that are both superstars and know how to win. And it was there he sort of talked about how he learned that you have to handle every player a little bit differently. And it's not because some players need special treatment. Certainly some players are going to be more influential than others. There's no doubt about that. Like, what Donovan Mitchell thinks matters more than what the 13th guy on any bench in the NBA thinks. That's how this world works. And I don't think that's an NBA specific thing. I think that's how the world works. The folks that perform at a higher level are going to have more input. But there are different ways to handle stars. Like the way that Tyronn Lue and the Clippers handle stars is different than the way that Steve Kerr and the Golden State Warriors handle stars. And I think it's a really good thing that Kenny Atkinson got experience in both of those areas, because he had really, really high things to say about Steve Kerr and the way that the Warriors operate. Like he singled them out as a big reason as to why he was sitting on that stage on Monday talking about becoming the new head coach of the Cavs. And the way that Kerr has handled stars historically, I think has been really good. There has obviously been some issues with Draymond Green. I don't think the Cavs right now have a Draymond Green type personality. I think very few teams in the NBA do. But then he's also different in the way that he handles Steph Curry and that he handled Klay Thompson, who's now obviously on the Dallas Mavericks after agreeing to a deal there yesterday. So Kenny learning that and being around that and seeing someone do things in Steve Kerr a different way than he had done before, I think is going to be really important as he takes on this head coaching job, because he touched upon so much how relationships are really the most important part of coaching. And he's right. You have to get buy-in from the locker room in the NBA or you're not going to be successful. You're just not going to do that. And every coach has a different way of building those. Kenny does seem like a very hands-on type of guy. He seems like player development is very important to him. He talked about being someone that is working one-on-one with players and certain skills. Even if it's grabbing rebounds for them while they're getting shots up after practice, Kenny Atkinson sounds like a guy that's going to be doing those things. And he sounds like a guy that genuinely enjoys doing those things, which is something that, some guys will suck it up and do that. But Kenny seems like a guy that's what he wants to be doing. He's been described, certainly nationally, as sort of a basketball junkie. And he was asked about that at the press conference on Monday, and he confirmed it. He said this is who he is. He loves basketball. He loves being in the gym. And I thought the anecdote Kobe Altman told about when he offered Kenny the job sort of spoke to that, because Kenny is, aside from now being the head coach of the Cavs, he's also an assistant coach with the French national team. Obviously, the Olympics are coming up shortly here. So Kenny has been in France for a decent amount of the summer, practicing with guys like Rudy Gobert, Victor Wembanyama, and everyone on that team over in France. So when Kobe Altman called Kenny to offer him the job, Altman talked about how the phone kept ringing, and he got to like the fifth or sixth ring, and he said to himself, man, am I really about to call this guy to offer him the head coaching job, and he might not be able to answer the phone? And, you know, he answers the phone ultimately, probably just before it went to voicemail. And Kobe goes, did I get you? And Kobe goes, I could hear like him fumbling around with the phone, like he sounded like he had to run to get it. And he goes, were you just at practice? He goes, yeah, I'm walking out of the gym right now. And I think that speaks to who Kenny Atkinson is as a coach. He's going to give everything that he has. Not to say that other coaches don't. I think most in the NBA do. But I think his style is one that's going to be really good for this team. I think he's going to be able to get the stars to buy in. I think it was a great thing that Kenny, Kobe, I believe a couple of other people with the Cavs organization were in Los Angeles this past weekend meeting with Donovan Mitchell. They talked about having, I don't remember if it was lunch or dinner with him, but they had a meal with him. They talked some basketball stuff, but they really just got to know each other as people. Kenny and Donovan are from somewhat similar areas, certainly a similar part of the country where they grew up. So they do have some common ground between them. But just getting started on building that relationship, I think, is very important. And I think Kenny's going to handle that really, really well. And I'm excited because of what he has learned over the last couple of years as an assistant coach. I'm excited to see how he intertwines that into his previous head coaching experience, because I think it'll all be really good stuff for the Cavs. We did learn basketball specific stuff too at the press conference on Monday. Evan Mobley, I think, is going to be a big part of the Cavs under Kenny Atkinson. We'll talk about that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. We all love sports. If you're watching or listening to this right now, you love sports and you don't want them to stop. But unfortunately, there are some slower periods in the sports calendar. We're sort of in one right now. You know, we are approaching the All-Star break in Major League Baseball, and really at that point, the only thing that's going to be going on is the WNBA. There's not going to be much else, but if there's something going on, FanDuel has you covered as a place where if you want to place down a wager, if you want to spice things up, have a little bit of extra fun, FanDuel is the place to go. Just open up the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. Right now, one of the bets that I really like, and I've talked about the Cleveland Guardians when I've been talking about FanDuel quite a bit recently. The Guardians didn't have the best week. They're back in action tonight after they lost 3 out of 4 to Kansas City over the weekend on the road. They're plus 700 to win the American League. Now, as I record this, I believe the Guardians have the best record in said American League. Well, they're tied for the third best odds. Both New York and Baltimore have better odds of winning the pennant than the Guardians do. They have the same odds as Seattle. Plus 700 feels like, to me, great value. They need to make some improvements on that roster. I think they need more pitching. You never have enough hitting, right? But plus 700 feels like pretty good value for me. So that's where I'm at. That's where my mind is at right now with the Cleveland Guardians. And you can get that on FanDuel. Head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon because they are hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's LOCKEDON. And you can start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So the other things that Kenny talked about that I found to be very interesting had more to do with basketball. He was asked, I believe Jason Lloyd of The Athletic was the one that asked this question, that, you know, does Evan Mobley need to be the best player on this team for this team to be in title contention? And the premise of that question was, you know, Donovan Mitchell has been I think Jason termed it as a top 15 player in basketball since he's been with the Cavs. Personally, I think it's been a little bit higher than that, but I don't think that distinction's all that important for the sake of this question. And he basically said, does Donovan need to be the second best player behind Evan if the Cavs are going to win a title? Kenny says he doesn't think so, but he does think Evan needs to be in that like top 15, top 20 range of players. And I think that there's some low-hanging fruit with Evan that can really improve him. And that improvement, of course, we're talking about on the offensive end of the floor, because defensively, he really doesn't need improvement. Like, he is one of the best defenders in basketball, and I just don't think it's worth spending time on that topic because you know what you're going to get there. And, Kenny was asked about making it work with two bigs, because that seems to be the direction the Cavs want to go, that they want to run it back with the core four, and we'll talk about that a little bit coming up. But with Evan Mobley, with Jarrett Allen being on the floor at the same time, Kenny Atkinson compared that to his time with Golden State, where they would play Draymond Green and they would play Kevon Looney on the floor at the same time. Neither one of those guys is really considered any threat beyond the arc. I mean, they're really not considered a threat any further out than like 10 to 12 feet from the basket. I think Evan Mobley's considered a threat a little bit further out than that, but certainly not a guy that defenses are going to respect from beyond the arc right now. I think one day maybe they will, but right now they don't. And Kenny said that he has a lot of ideas from his time in that system with those two guys that can really help to elevate not only this team, but Evan in specific. And I think that's a really important thing. And I think that's something that should really excite Cavs fans. Because if there's a coach that believes he can get more out of this two big system and that there's a lot being left on the table there, I think that's a really good thing. So one of the questions I asked Kenny, and this will get to my next point, is, the Nets played with a ton of pace when Kenny was the head coach. They were top 10 in pace in 3 of the 4 years. That fourth year, they were 11th in pace. So they were always top half of the league. The Cavs have been bottom half of the league. They've been one of the slowest teams in basketball over the last couple of years. And pace isn't a good or bad stat. It's just, this is how you play. It's a stylistic stat. It's not a results-based stat. And one of the things that he said is that, yeah, the Cavs play with two bigs, but they're two fast bigs. They're two bigs that can both get up and down the floor. And I was curious, just from a pace perspective, how much more is that going to be something that unlocks Evan Mobley, that makes Evan Mobley better offensively just by playing faster? And Atkinson mentioned having Mobley bring the ball off more, which the Cavs did a little bit throughout the season last year. They didn't do it a ton. I don't think they did it. They certainly didn't do it enough for my liking. But he also mentioned being able to run the floor and push the pace when Evan's not bringing the ball up. And that was something that I think we saw a little bit less. Like, it seemed to me like a good chunk of the Cavs' transition opportunities came either on longer rebounds or if Evan Mobley got the rebound and he just took the ball and went. And I think having an opportunity to have Evan running the floor while someone else is handling the basketball is something that really can help this basketball team offensively. That pace, I don't think it needs to be top 10. I really don't think they need to be top 10 in the league in pace. But I do think that they need to be higher than like 25th. I think they need to be, if they're somewhere between 15 and 20 in pace, I think that this offense is going to look much different than it has. I think that would be one of the better things that you could ask for if you're a Cavs fan. And then lastly, my final thing that I thought we really learned from Kenny Atkinson, and I don't think that this came as a surprise, but he talked about how he believes that the core four can work together. He called them 4 all-stars, where Donovan is a perennial all-star. Darius Garland has made an all-star team. Jarrett Allen has made an all-star team. And he goes, well, Evan Mobley hasn't made an all-star team, but we all know that's coming. He said it very matter-of-factly, that just supreme confidence, and I think that'll be a good thing for Evan to hear, supreme confidence that Evan Mobley is going to be an all-star. I certainly agree with him. I believe that to be the case. But you don't talk about having 4 all-stars like that, as confident as Kenny said it, unless you believe that it's something that is true. And I don't know that for sure the Cavs are going to run it back. I think they should be open for business as this summer rolls along. And as I record this at, it's 11:10 Monday night, nothing has happened. They have not yet made a move. They're not going to go all summer without making a move. I think they should be open for business on that front. But if they don't, Atkinson sounds like he has a plan to make it work with these 4 guys. And while I still think the best thing for this team might be to separate some of that talent and reallocate it into a better wing than the Cavs have, I do think there's reason for optimism that if someone can get the most out of this group, Kenny Atkinson might be the guy. I just think that those are some of the things that are worth noting from Kenny's introductory press conference. The other thing that is worth noting from that press conference that a lot of people have talked about, that made its rounds on social media, was Koby Altman's answer to a question about Donovan Mitchell's contract extension that has not yet been agreed to. We'll talk about that next. Let's calm down a little bit right here on Locked On Cavs. So as I record this, again, a little bit after 11 Monday night, the Cavs and Donovan Mitchell have not yet agreed to a contract extension. There's been some worry floating around the internet from Cavs fans, nothing that has been reported, certainly, but there have been some fans that are just concerned that there hasn't been any news yet. And the longer that this drags on, the worse people start to feel about it. And I get it. I understand. It's not fun to wait for these things. It's not. I get it. I don't think that this is something to be concerned about. I really don't. Now, if Saturday comes and there's still nothing, and Sunday comes and there's still nothing, okay, that might be time to start worrying a little bit. But I don't think we're there yet. So Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com, he asked Koby Altman where things stood, essentially. And, Koby he didn't want to give a straight answer as far as saying, we're this close to agreeing to an extension. Here's exactly where things stand. And there's not really executives out there that are going to say, we are X number of dollars apart on an extension. And to be clear here, I believe the Cavs are offering Donovan the maximum amount of years and the maximum amount of dollars. So I don't think that would be an issue here. In fact, I don't think there is an issue here. I expect something to get done. I truly do. But Koby talked about how, Donovan has been very invested in Cleveland. He's been very pro-Cleveland. He's feeling great mentally and physically right now. He's been very involved with this offseason. And that, he hopes to have something more concrete sooner than later with this extension. I understand that people didn't love that answer because it wasn't, Donovan, we've agreed to a contract extension. I think that probably would have been the only answer people would have been happy about there. I really do. Like if Koby would have said, I think we're close, but we're not over the finish line yet, people would have been scared. I don't think that there was an answer that Koby could have given that would have calmed people down. That said, I really don't think there's a ton of reason to worry. I don't. I think that the Cavs and Donovan are in a very good space right now. I think that the two parties will have an extension. I'd be very, very surprised if by the end of this week they don't have something in place that's going to make Donovan Mitchell a Cavalier for a long time. I don't know if it's going to be 3 years or 4 years. Obviously, it's going to be the maximum amount of money that the Cavs can pay him. That is 100% not an issue here. They will pay him whatever it costs to keep him. But I would expect something to get done. I do not think, again, I will repeat, I do not think this is something that is worth worrying about. I don't. I think that things will get worked out. I think everything will be okay. And then once that happens, we can talk about it. We can talk about the rest of the roster and things that need to get done this summer because the Cavs haven't made any moves as of right now. That's not going to last forever. But nothing has happened quite yet. I think a lot for them is waiting on getting the Donovan news, getting that Donovan extension done. Once that's done, I think things for the Cavs start to speed up. And truthfully, outside of maybe Derrick Jones Jr., I'm not sure how many guys that have agreed to deals with other teams Maybe Tobias Harris, but with the money that he got from Detroit, I don't think he was ever going to be someone that the Cavs could have afforded at that price. I don't think they've really missed out on anybody. So I think that's something that you have to bring up when you talk about this. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. I want to do another mailbag holiday coming up later this week. I would like to be able to put together a mailbag so that I can give you guys 5 episodes this week. I'm not sure what my recording schedule is going to be just with the 4th of July falling in the middle of the week, but I would like to put together a mailbag. So you guys know the drill. Leave a comment to this video on YouTube if you are watching on YouTube. Ask your questions away. Put the tag mailbag. I will get to it. I will get to it later this week. Or you can tweet me. Or you can tweet the show. I'm at Real D Cunningham. The show account is at Locked On Cavs. Tweet your mailbag questions there. I will put together a mailbag episode later this week. You guys seem to have really enjoyed the few that I've done so far, so that will definitely be a staple as the summer rolls along. I'd like to do 1 or 2 of those a week, or even, maybe a mailbag segment every day. We will work it out, but I want you guys to feel very involved in the show because you are very involved in the show. You guys have been great so far. I've been doing this for a month. I've loved every second of it. The first month of Locked On Cavs for me has been one of the best months in show history, and I cannot wait to continue to take the show even further. And you guys are such a big part of why, and I could not be more grateful for the support that you have all given me. So again, mailbag questions at Real D Cunningham on Twitter. Comment right here or at Locked On Cavs on Twitter. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.